CM Punk was reportedly at the TNA Impact tapings. Guys, we're going to talk about it in today's video. Don't forget, I'm giving away this championship belt at 100,000 subscribers. All right, before we could get to CM Punk, I would really like to talk about this Vince McMahon stuff that's been talked about from Sean Ross Sapp on the Backstage Report podcast. Guys, very interesting stuff. He said the changes seemed overnight, even though Vince McMahon didn't interact directly with creative this year, which means a guy like Ryan Ward or Rob Fee, or names you might know on the creative team, didn't have interactions with Vince McMahon to the best of our knowledge. A lot of those changes may have looked minimal to the creative team, I'm told, but to others it wasn't so minimal. Because there were certain talent who weren't being used because Vince McMahon didn't want to use, so they couldn't use them. Therefore, a lot of their creative couldn't be changed. So basically, what you guys need to know is when WWE made the decision for Vince McMahon to step away from creative, this is essentially why. Look, WWE is a powerhouse. WWE is a massive, massive company, and Triple H taking over creative has been a very, very good decision. And we've always known that Vince McMahon, since the time he retired, he was a little bit involved, but nobody really knew to the extent. We knew that maybe he was checking in remotely, changing some stuff here and there, but he was really dictating who's allowed to be on the show and who's not allowed to be on the show. Now, on the channel, you may have heard us talk a little bit more about this, specifically with certain talents not being used. I don't think it's a coincidence at this point, like somebody like Johnny Gargano wasn't being used. I think Johnny Gargano was a good example. I think you've seen tons of people. Xia Li wasn't being used. And now, all of a sudden, these talents are being used. So, at the end of the day, what you really need to realize is that Vince McMahon, maybe he wasn't, backstage lurking around and changing everything and ripping up scripts every single week. But ultimately, WWE had to form their creative decisions based on what Vince McMahon wanted on their TV show. And I think for Vince McMahon to be that heavily involved in the product was detrimental to the product. It's not that WWE's creative was bad since, he retired, but obviously we saw massive improvements. We saw a lot of changes, a lot of structural changes to the shows and stuff. But at the same time, too, it was still Vince McMahon dictating who and who can't be on TV. And I didn't like that. I never liked the idea of Vince McMahon saying, well, this guy is too little or too big or this, that, whatever. It's always like you got to have really good talent on your show who have strong characters or strong connections with their audience. And maybe Johnny Gargano isn't for you, but for a lot of fans, Johnny Gargano is something. When you put DIY together, there is some magic there. Fans like that, right? And look, it's pretty obvious. WWE, under Vince McMahon, really didn't care about women's wrestling and didn't really care about tag teams. Like, those were two really big things. And we all know that Vince McMahon really didn't give a shit about those mid-card championship belts. Triple H came in, he changed that, he made those changes. And then on top of that, we're already starting to see a vast improvement on the women's division booking and tag team division. So at the end of the day, this is one of those things where I am just excited that Vince McMahon is no longer in creative. Speaking of WWE creative, it appears that some changes have been made. There are tons and tons of people talking about Raw versus SmackDown at Survivor Series. I do believe to a certain extent, based on what we're seeing on television, that WWE is pretty much falling in line with what Dave Meltzer is saying here. He noted in the daily update on The Observer that basically on last night's show, based on the angle, they talked about the possibility of Raw versus SmackDown War Games match at Survivor Series. They were specifically told that right now the War Games match is not planned for a Raw versus SmackDown match. Now, this is an interesting decision, but I definitely understand when you look at the broad spectrum of the storytelling WWE has been producing. Because if you look at WWE, the product overall, we have seen Judgment Day and Bloodline kind of form like this alliance for a while now. It's kind of been like a long-term thing, and now more and more pieces have been added to the puzzle, which it looks like it's relatively clear they have some sort of alliance. So I think it's very easy for WWE to do this for War Games. I think you're going to have Cody, Sami Zayn, Jey Uso. They're going to have one more partner, which I thought it might be Kevin Owens, but he got traded to SmackDown, so I don't think that's a possibility. And then, of course, there's the element of the surprise return of Randy Orton. And I think this could be a very big scenario for WWE creatively, because when Randy Orton returns, more than likely at Survivor Series, I think if you factor that into the equation, nobody really knows if Randy Orton is going to be a heel or a babyface. And if you really just want to have a storyline that, like, catapults multiple different stories. You can't do Raw versus SmackDown in this scenario. In this scenario, you have to lead with that idea of the baby faces versus the heels that are part of this Bloodline Judgment Day storyline. So I'm curious to see how this all pans out. But more importantly, I want to know what happens next for Randy Orton, because there's a potential possibility he could come in as a big baby face and then literally the next night for Raw, he shows up as a heel. And personally speaking, if I was WWE and we're talking about Cody Rhodes facing adversity going into WrestleMania 40, there is no better storyline than Randy Orton going after Cody Rhodes. I think Drew McIntyre versus Cody Rhodes is a phenomenal story, but if you could have Randy Orton come in as a heel and do that, I think it can make a lot of sense. I think actually for Survivor Series, maybe Seth Rollins is involved in that too. We'll see if he's defending the championship, because you could always do Cody, Sammy, Jey Uso, Seth, and Randy, and that's like really iconic for your baby faces. It could be really cool, but then the plot twist is on Monday Night Raw, Randy turns heel. If Randy Orton turns heel, does it against Cody, Cody's facing adversity yet again, and I think that'll be a very, very, very good storyline moving forward. And this brings us to our final story of the day, guys. Super, super excited about this one. CM Punk was reportedly backstage at Sunday night's TNA tapings. That's right, guys. I told you, I'm no longer referring to it as Impact Wrestling anymore. The company's moving forward in January 2024 as TNA, and from this point on, we're calling them TNA. That's their true identity. Absolutely love it. House of Wrestling has reported that CM Punk did attend the Impact Wrestling on Access TV tapings on Sunday. The report noted that he showed up just before the taping started and was taken to the locker room. The report noted that CM Punk was talking with anyone who wanted to spend time with him, including key Impact talent. This is really cool because we know when CM Punk was suspended by AEW, he showed up at Impact Wrestling. And now look, the idea that CM Punk could come to TNA is a very, very massive thing, and I'm going to explain why. The easy choice for CM Punk is to sign with WWE. A lot of money, a lot of opportunity, part-time talent. There's a lot of things he could do in WWE to clean up his legacy and do all of these different things. But we're talking about TNA making a new era. We're talking about Impact absolutely changing the game here. How else can you stick it to AEW? You can go to WWE and that would be massive, but if you go to TNA and help this company who is literally changing everything about their product, and they already have the good creative, they already have good business decisions behind them, but when you have CM Punk go to TNA and help lead the charge for TNA, it is going to create some crazy momentum for that company. And I'm telling you guys right now, Las Vegas, hard to kill. If TNA could secure Will Ospreay and CM Punk, it's a massive, massive, massive ordeal, and it does more for pro wrestling than anything else. CM Punk could go to WWE, and it's a massive win for CM Punk. If CM Punk goes to TNA, it's a massive win for the industry. And the reason why I'm so hell-bent on also mentioning Will Ospreay is because Will Ospreay is the best wrestler in the world, and he is the biggest name in the world that doesn't need WWE or AEW. He doesn't need them, okay? And quite frankly, WWE and AEW don't need Will Ospreay. They don't need CM Punk. But TNA bringing them both in solidifies them as a massive, massive, massive victory. It gives them all of this power and momentum going forward. And look, they want to do these bigger venues. You want to do things like that. There's got to be a lot of confidence for TNA if they're able to secure these guys. So me personally, I'm 100% like, I support the idea. It is a better move overall for the wrestling industry. Why is CM Punk backstage at TNA 2 times in a calendar year? He's not signed by them. He doesn't have to offer people their time, but that locker room, bringing in CM Punk with open arms could be a massive change and a massive win for TNA moving forward. Just like it could be for somebody who subscribes, because at 100,000 subscribers, I'm giving away this championship belt.